today is someone that many of you already know, and that's Eve Galanter. Eve currently serves on the board of the Wisconsin Newspaper Association, the sponsor of the Wisconsin Civics Games, of which she is the founder, as well as the boards of the Capital Times Kids Fund, Madison Public Library, and the Monroe Street Arts Center. Eve also hosts District Reports on the Madison City Channel, and she's a graduate of the University of Chicago. Eve's going to tell us today about how the Wisconsin Civics Games will promote civic and civil participation and engagement and encourage the next generation to become active in local and state government. We look forward to your presentation, Eve, and as a way to say thanks, we're making a contribution to the Rotary International Polio Plus Fund. If time allows at the end of for questions, please wait for the microphone in the audience so everybody can hear the question. And Eve has also said that she'll stay a couple of minutes after today's lunch, and she'll be up here if you want to bring questions to her. Thank you, Eve.
That comes later. Andrea, thank you for that very nice introduction and allowing me to speak to the Downtown Rotary at lunch off my bucket list. About 20 years ago, when I was the Madison Civics Club's public affairs speaker, the title of my talk and the first line of my presentation was, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." Yes, exactly the same response. Laughter. Government, help. And for the time allotted, I narrated a typical day in the office of a U.S. Senator. The highs and lows, the opportunities to successfully offer real help, and the frustration when, despite all my best efforts, I wasn't able to help. And the humorous interactions between staffer and constituent that stay with me all these years later. My 8 years on the Madison City Council, one of then 22 members, from 1981 to 1989, representing the Near West Side, including 1 year as council president, were an appropriate prelude to serving as Senator Herb Kohl's Madison office director. Civic engagement at all times, civil engagement whenever possible, even when constituents called at inopportune times of day or night. Remember, at that time, there was no email, no computers, no cell phones, at least for me. My kids grew up discussing and sometimes arguing with me at the dinner table about upcoming issues or votes I'd cast, gaining civic knowledge. Through that knowledge, both civic and civil engagement were fostered. My youngest is actually the principal of Emma's elementary school at Glenn Stevens Elementary School, Sarah Galanter Gushevsky, known as Mrs. Gigi. My background and commitment to public service continue today. As Andrea mentioned, I host district reports. It's really an excuse for me to spend time watching the Plan Commission and the ALRC and the council meetings just to keep up to speed and abreast of the issues, and also my service on the critically important Madison Public Library Board. Given all this, you can imagine my concern when I saw a headline, which none of you can read, but it's yellowed, January 6th, 2016. It says, all 3 school board incumbents running unopposed. And the article noted that 6 of the last 7 school board races had been uncontested. Below that article, an exhaustive list of candidates who had filed to be on the ballot in Dane County, in school board races, in city council and village board and town races. Many of the names of the candidates were followed with an I, in parentheses, an I for incumbent, and there was no challenger. And this holds for this spring as well, for Dane County The Dane County race, there are 37 seats on the Dane County board. Only 2 incumbents are challenged, and 8 seats without an incumbent. There is only 1 candidate. Why, I wondered, and I still do. What is this trend? Is everyone doing such a great job that no one wants to challenge them? And a concern I had that without opponents, there was little opportunity to discuss the issues. No civic engagement. In August 2016, my concerns and anecdotal information were replaced by actual research. The Wisconsin Taxpayers Alliance, as they were then known, published the results of a survey of about 500 cities and villages in Wisconsin, a study commissioned by the League of Municipalities. And regardless of municipal size, 52% of officials surveyed said they averaged 0 to 1 candidate per seat over the past 3 years. Only 4% reported an average of 2 or more candidates, and 74% averaged between 1 and 2 candidates offering some voter choice. Only 5% reported races involving 2 or more candidates. Almost 2/3 had no board or council contests, and in some places, ballots would have blank spots. No one was running. A lot of statistics, but really important numbers. Why? Apathy? Yes. Lack of citizen knowledge or interest in municipal news, especially, and this was important at that time, among the younger population. The state legislature noticed and they took action. No, they didn't require civics education, but they do require students to pass the same test required of a person applying for U.S. citizenship in order to graduate. They have to correctly answer 60% of the questions, and they can just keep on taking it until they pass. There were also no funds allocated to administer it. So I went to visit my friends at the Wisconsin Counties Association and the League of Municipalities to plead my case for increasing interest in public service, certain that if we provided more opportunities to attain civic knowledge, the resulting increased civic engagement would lead to an increased interest in public service. I said, we need a succession plan, as if we were a business. They urged me to continue to research, come back with a solution. So I then continued my research, and one morning I watched Supreme Court Justices Gorsuch and Sotomayor discuss civics on CBS in the morning. They shared that a survey had shown only about 32% of Americans could name all 3 branches of government, and 1/3 could not name any of the 3. It also showed that people who were greater consumers of news were more likely to know answers to key civics questions, including naming the branches of government. And most incredibly, Justice Gorsuch said that 10% of a survey's respondents, he didn't say who conducted the survey, believed that TV's Judge Judy served with him on the court. We used that extraordinary result as the basis for one of our questions at the Civics Games. Describe the process by which Judge Judy could serve on the U.S. Supreme Court and the process by which she could serve on the Wisconsin Supreme Court. All of the students got the answer correctly. I had an idea. What I recalled about high school students is that they like competition. They like playing on teams. They like being smarter than their parents. Perhaps we should challenge them to compete on their civic knowledge and hope that the result of increased civic and civil engagement would yield increased interest in public service. I brought this idea to the Wisconsin Newspaper Association, as newspapers have long played an important role in civic engagement and democracy. And they, I thought, would say, that's an interesting idea. But no, they said, yes, let's do it. Go for it. And so the Wisconsin Games, Civics Games came to be, and I embarked on a new volunteer role as a member of the WNA's foundation board. Actually, I had called the games originally the Wisconsin Civics Bowl, my memories of the College Bowl still relevant to me. Others thought games would be more attractive to students and therefore to teachers. And I asked my then 16-year-old granddaughter. She said, definitely games, and I acquiesced. So here's how the inaugural year of the games worked. An email was sent to every Wisconsin public and private high school, to their principals, to their social studies teachers, and to private and religious and homeschool organizations involved with high schools, letting them know about the games, about how to register a team of up to 4 students, about information that would be sent to them, the print and digital newspaper platforms that would be available. And then I actually began cold calling random high schools. Hi, I'm Eve Galanter, the Wisconsin Newspaper Association Foundation. I expected people to go click, to sell them on the idea. And I did fundraising and securing sponsors to cover some of the costs. I also began to write the nearly 100 questions and answers of varying difficulty for the regional games, and later another 100 for the finals. I was reasonably optimistic, but also a little realistic about the number of schools that might participate our first year, assuming many would just wait and see how it went. We chose UW campuses for the regional competition sites, figuring, among other things, it's an opportunity for them to show off their campus to students who would drive, in some cases, almost 2 hours or more to get to that regional site. We used the WIAA boundaries because I thought they were familiar to the high schools, though I was sorely tempted to do my own gerrymandering. We arranged for the finals to be held at the Capitol. For the first round of the regional competitions, teams were randomly paired. I actually just drew names of high schools out of a bowl. And then using brackets, my first introduction to brackets, pairing winning teams followed for subsequent rounds. It went really well until, and that was in February. Then there was a polar vortex. It resulted in some teams having to cancel for the finals, which had to be postponed. But finally, more than 100 students competed in the rescheduled finals at the Capitol in a 4th-floor hearing room. Chief Justice Rogensack welcomed the teams of students, their teachers, their families, and classmates. Wisconsin Eye live streamed the day-long event. It's still on their website, and so their classmates back at school could watch them as they competed. We had a bipartisan group of legislators asking the questions, judging their correctness, and keeping score. And Governor Evers came to offer congratulations. Platteville High School actually won the very first Wisconsin Civics Games, and each student on that team received a $2,000 scholarship to attend a Wisconsin college or university of their choice. Muskego came in second. Madison Memorial, with a team of 2, came in third. As promised, back to Justice Sotomayor. After watching her on TV, I called her office and invited her to be the keynote speaker at the finals. I was told her schedule was fairly full for the next 3 years. I thought, who plans that far in advance? Weddings, bar mitzvahs, but 3 years. While I was on the phone, I asked if instead, since I had the attention of her staffer, I might have a letter from her addressed to the students. Yes, I was told, so long as it wasn't used for fundraising, and I quickly agreed. Each student received a copy of her letter. I couldn't have drafted anything better, and we did put it ultimately on our website, wisconsincivicsgames.com. In part, she quoted Benjamin Franklin, who, when asked as he exited the Constitutional Convention in 1787, what sort of government he and his fellow framers had created. And famously, Dr. Franklin replied, "A republic, if you can keep it." As for the 2020 games, we're deep into planning. 21st, no February or March dates. The regional competitions will be held around the state on April 24th in Madison at the Pyle Center, and you are all invited. The public is invited. At UW Green Bay, at UW La Crosse, and at Marquette University. The top 3 winning teams from each region will compete in the finals in the Capitol on Friday, May 15th in 411 South, the hearing room. And you are all invited to that as well. And yes, I have many new questions to draft. We try to have a range of levels of difficulty, including knowledge of local, state, and federal issues, using current events to explore and frame some of the public policy process and issues. There are some topics that weren't as fully explored last year that we'll add some questions about this year. There will be questions about impeachment, brokered nominating conventions. And here's one for our spelling bee champions. Can one of you please raise your hand and someone will come with a microphone to spell a word that we're going to make one of our topics. The word is emoluments. Raise your hand if you wish to spell emoluments. All right.
Can you repeat the word?
The word is emoluments. Emoluments. Its origin is late Middle English, and it is a salary, a fee, or a profit from employment or office.
EMOLLUMENTS.
Oh, not quite, but thank you, thank you. The correct spelling is EMOLUMENTS. It will be a topic of the Civics Games, and by the time you're in high school, we'll expect to see you on a team. And now each of you will have an opportunity to see examples of questions that were posed to our students last year. I'll read the question, and they will appear on the screen, thanks to Jane Coster, who provides technology to a total non-techie. And we'll give you the same maximum of 10 seconds the students had to answer each question, at which time I will hit my front desk bell. They each had a bell like this. I confess that it made it a little difficult for our judges to determine exactly who had hit the bell at what time. We knew which direction, but which one. And this year we're thinking maybe a battery-operated one with a light and something else, but I sort of like these. Once they hit the bell, we had some rules. Once they hit the bell, they had 2 seconds to answer or forfeit to the other team. That is, they couldn't get an advantage of just hitting the bell first and then thinking, do I know that answer? They got 10 points for each correct answer. We won't submit you to that, and you can collaborate with your table teammates. And yes, we'll post the answers on the screen, and we'll see how you might compete with those students, and maybe sometime Rotary could invite them and a brave panel of your members to have a little competition. And when you have an answer, just raise your hand and the microphone man will come to you. Is that Pete? Is he still got it? Yes? Okay. All right. When we're done with these questions that I'm asking you, I'll be delighted to answer your questions. So the very first question, we'll get this up on the board. Oh, yes, I have it. Number 1, name 4 or more county officers whose jobs are created by the state constitution. Where is, I'm looking for my,
Sheriff, DA, Coroner, and Register of Deeds.
I'm
Sheriff-
sorry, sir, would you speak up?
Sheriff, DA, Coroner, and Register of Deeds.
And the answer is not. Not by Sheriff, DA, County Clerk, County Treasurer, Clerk of Circuit Court, and Register of Deeds. But thank you. Our next question. In 1982, Wisconsin was the first state to outlaw what type of discrimination? Oh my goodness.
Religious?
Religious? No. Would someone else, we will turn that over to someone else.
Sexual orientation?
That is correct. 10 points to your table. Question number 3. What are the 5 freedoms identified in the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution? After the answer, I will tell you what amazed me with our students. 5 freedoms. Freedom of religion, freedom of speech, right to petition government, right to assemble, and the one that the high school students kept leaving out, freedom of the press. Sponsored by the Wisconsin Newspaper Association. Question number 4. In Wisconsin, the governor has the exclusive power to grant pardons. Name 3 or more of the rights that are restored as a result of a gubernatorial pardon. Is there an answer? Travel abroad is, I can't say it's wrong, it's just not one that I have seen. So I will hold off on saying that's not correct. Does anyone have any others they wish to add to that? The right to own a gun, the right to vote, the right to serve on a jury, the right to hold public office, and the right to seek or renew a professional license. Question number 5, our last question. In 2018, a proposed amendment to the Wisconsin Constitution failed to pass a statewide vote. What change would its passage have made? That's what that student said too.
There's one in the back.
Exactly. It would have eliminated the office of state treasurer. I hope you enjoyed this brief glimpse into the Wisconsin Civics Games. For more information, please pick up a brochure on your way out. We have one here somewhere. They look like this. The young woman on the cover was from Northland Pines High School. She got into Stanford and Yale and accepted an appointment to West Point. Encourage family and friends who have students in high school to register a team when registration opens again next fall, and I'd love to have the Rotary involved. Let me end with former Justice Sandra Day O'Connor, who the founder of iCivics, who said, There is no more important work than deepening young people's engagement in our nation. I'm Eve Galanter, and I approve this message.
Thank you, Eve. Great presentation. I think we all need to do a little homework. Is there a study guide for the students who are preparing?
The students are provided with information about from the Wisconsin Counties Association, from the League of Municipalities. We also have an information guide online on our website. They are given sample questions, and I'm very pleased that this year, at my request, every state legislator who has a high school with a team registered in the game has sent each member of the team a blue book to give them some additional information about what is going on as well. Thank you. Yes.
Right here. Oops.
You're going to quote to me that there's a coroner.
Nice job. I want to ask, when and really with what motivation was civics removed from high school curriculum? And many of us remember that there was, in the Department of Public Instruction, a social studies coordinator who you could have called on immediately for help, not that you needed it.
No,
Thanks.
thank you, Carol. There is still a social studies coordinator at DPI, Christy McDaniel, I believe, who is absolutely fabulous and helped to connect me with all of the social studies teachers in Wisconsin. I don't know when civics lost its role as a core part of the curriculum. It is included occasionally in some history or other social studies courses. There has been some talk, and I've seen even from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and others a renewed interest in civics education and how important it is to our democracy. They think that it's possible to create a curriculum or to require a curriculum that is not too burdensome. Others have said that there are already too many mandates that are required for teaching in a curriculum, whether in Wisconsin or in Arizona. I know there is also an effort to renew a requirement for civics education. I know at some points our governor has said that he thinks that such a curriculum would certainly add a great deal to our state. But I do not know whether our legislature agrees with that. Yes, sir.
Hi. Given the sort of a high level of information that these students had, these were informed young citizens, and yet the huge decline in newspaper readership, did you happen to ask them or poll them as to what their sources of information were?
That's a very good question. Yes, they read newspapers, but they read them online. I mean, it is, it is no surprise that readership of the physical newspaper, without which I couldn't start my day, has declined dramatically. The ownerships of newspapers have shifted. But the students are saying that they do read online. What they are very interested in, of course, is learning more about how to discern the real news from fake news, from real fake news. And that is something I think could also potentially be taught in our schools, perhaps in our journalism classes or in social studies, a critical skill to be able to read, to receive information and figure out, is this for real? I do again want to urge you please to take a brochure. think about, I need to tell you that of the Madison area schools, the teams that are going to be participating in April are in Wanakee, in Monona Grove, East, Edgewood.
Is it on?
And there was, and not Middleton. Memorial was in and is now had to pull out due to a conflict. Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
I had a question regarding the difference between Wisconsin and other states as far as civic knowledge, and also United States as compared to other countries in terms of civic knowledge.
Well, I think that summary, that what I mentioned in terms of the survey, says a great deal about what Americans overall. I do not have a comparable solely for Wisconsin, but I think you've raised a very interesting question, and perhaps it's something that Polco or the Wisconsin Policy Forum or someone else may want to pursue to determine just how knowledgeable folks are here in Wisconsin. I think we see ourselves as very, very knowledgeable, but there is the deep dive that some of these kids have taken in preparing for the Civics Games and being able to apply their knowledge to current events is something that, is probably not something that I, as an older person in Wisconsin, can compare with. Okay, thank you again. Oh, I'm sorry.
I think we need to. Stand up.
Here's the mic, here's the mic.
Quickly, I just wanted to mention, I'm Mary Beth, I work at the Center for Community and Nonprofit Studies at the University of Wisconsin, and had the opportunity to participate 2 years ago in a national conference for states and municipalities to run federal data on their levels of civic engagement. And Wisconsin had never done this before, although 30-some states have done it multiple times. So we put together a nonpartisan coalition of statewide organizations that are running a very first Civic Health of Wisconsin report. So in the next couple of months, and I'm hoping we'll be able to collaborate with Eve a little bit on the rollout, you should be seeing some new data about where Wisconsin figures as compared to the rest of the country with regard to civic engagement. It won't necessarily get at the knowledge base, but other metrics like voting and attending public meetings and running for public office and things like that.
Thank you, Mary Beth.
That's great. Well, thank you, Eve, for that presentation. And we are adjourned.